When I think of Kristen, I think of several things. I first think that she was an incredible mother to her two children. Um, Even through her sickness, she never neglected her children. She was always there. Uh, she never put herself first. She always put herself second. When I think of Kristen, I think of the little girl who was raised in church, used to play church. She would imitate me as a pastor. She would pray for people who were sick with her dolls. I remember her and Angie used to play dress up. She would always capture my heart no matter what, with her blonde hair, her smile. She just had a way of arresting my heart when I would see her. She had a smile. Kristen had a smile that could light up a room. Her eyes were just the most incredible eyes. They would almost pierce you as she would talk to you. And through that, she was Daddy's little girl. So through her eyes, her smile, her personality, she was just one of those people that could walk into a room and everybody would stop and look. But far greater than any of that, Kristen, to me, was a person that went through adversity long before she got cancer because of the divorce that her mother and I went through. She really raised Brandon and Angie. She was there because her mother was working. I was gone a lot. And she really was like the mother figure to Brandon and to Angie. And that's why when she passed, it was such a great loss because they didn't just lose a sister, but they lost a mother figure as well. So I guess to sum it up, she was one of those people that you could just count on. She was one of those people that you could just fall in love with. She was one of those people that would protect her children. She was a provider. She was overall one of those people that you say, you know what, we've done well. And I'm very, very proud of her. I do. I have a lot of favorite memories with Kristen. Of course, growing up in a pastor's home, interesting because I'd watch the children make fun of the members. So it's pretty interesting. And we grew up, at that time I was pastoring a very small church as they were growing up. And I can remember that we were very poor, but we would make things work. And when Kristen started dressing up, putting on makeup and perfume, later on in life, of course, she would not have a lot of money. So she would get very big bottles of perfume that she probably paid $1 for. I mean, it was like you could buy this perfume by the gallon for $1. And Kristen would wear that, and I'll never forget, and Angie actually gave me her last bottle of perfume, and I have it to this day. But I'll never forget, I took her to the mall, and I took her into this perfume shop. And this has been many, many years ago, probably 15 years ago. And I said, Kristen, pick out anything you want. And she picked out this perfume that really, it sincerely didn't cost a lot for perfume. I think $30, $40, $50 if I recall. And she got that. She said, can I have that? I said, yes. And her eyes lit up as if I had given her a brand new house. And she always would wear that perfume. Even to the day that she died, she would wear that perfume. And Angie, after she had passed, Kristen had passed, Angie gave me her last bottle of perfume and wrote this letter and said that that perfume meant the world to her. And to this day, that perfume means everything to me. Just the little things. Just the little things. Mm-hmm. But it made such a difference. The other thing is, I was going through my safe the other day, and I kept all of Kristen's belongings in that safe. And I opened a card, And it was when I had taken her to Hawaii after we had found out that she was terminal. And I said, Kristen, where would you like to go? What would you like to do? And I don't think Kristen really understood how sick she was. Yeah. And she said, I want to go to Hawaii. So I said, let's go to Hawaii. So Kristen, myself, and one of her friends, Kim, we went to Hawaii. And I rented out a sailboat. And we went out onto the water in Maui, where the wells were breaching. And I'll never forget this. The captain of the sailboat stopped the boat out on that water as the wells were breaching, and he said, you're about to hear something incredible. And he dropped a microphone about 20 feet into the water, and you could hear the wells singing. And Kristen began to cry. She was just shocked of that sound of those wells communicating. It was one of the most, what can I say, one of those moments that everything was quiet, and I watched this young girl just being captivated by the creation that God created, how that He created the wells to sing, and she was there listening to it at that moment. Very few people get to hear what she heard. And then I'll never forget, right after that, I said, what do you want to do? And she said, let's get in the water. Here's wells all around us. And we put these tubes on us, and I was the first to go. So I jumped in this water, and the water, they didn't tell me how cold it was. And I jumped in, and it took my breath. And I didn't know the current was taking me, and the current was taking me away. And next thing I knew, Kristen was in the water. And we were yelling and screaming, but that was one of those times that you just look back and say, I'm thankful that I took the time to do that. It just stands out even to this day. Never forget, I was actually in this office right here, and I received a phone call from my daughter Angie that said Kristen had a seizure. And Kristen had never had really a sick day. And I thought, well, she's under a lot of stress and pressure, and everything's going to be okay. And I just told Angie, I said, well, let them take her to the hospital and let me know what's going on. And about 4 or 5 hours later, I think it was Angie that called and said, Dad, you need to come to the hospital. This was from Tampa to Orlando. And she said, something's not right. She said, something's just not right. She said, Kristen won't come out of the seizure. She's got what they call a stupor, so she was not really coherent, or she's kind of in a fog of what was going on. So I rushed as fast as I could to the hospital, and the doctor said, well, we're going to do some tests. It may be stress-related, etc. So they kept her overnight. She finally came out of the seizure, didn't even actually know where she was, and they ran a lot of tests, and they came back and said it was a brain tumor, but that it didn't look to be terminal, that they thought maybe a stage 2 or stage 3, but that we certainly had our challenges, and they wanted to do a biopsy. When they did the biopsy, which was about a day later, where they would go into the brain, go into the tumor, and they did the biopsy, they came back, and I'll never forget, I was the first to receive the news. Because I called the doctor back and I shut the door and I said, listen, as the father, I want to know how bad is this? And he said, this is very, very critical. And his face was as white as this pad right here. He really sincerely cared, and I could sense that he cared. And when he gave me that news, I remember it as if it happened this morning. I ran out to this garden area, and it was lightly sprinkling, and I just fell on the ground. I lost every emotion, and I screamed as loud as I could scream, and collapsed. And it wasn't long after that that Debbie and Eric and Angie and Brandon and Brad all got the news, and we all went out to that garden and just wept and cried and sang which seems to be unusual that we would sing, but we were actually coming together by faith, believing that God would heal her. But it was one of the most gut-wrenching, sick, bottom of your stomach feeling that I've ever encountered in my entire life. And I remember driving home from Orlando that night after they had told me that, and I cried for 2 hours coming here and then cried the rest of the night. It was just, I didn't have any control over that. Well, I think it's important for the people that are watching to understand that, first of all, I'm not a poet. Second, I've never written a song ever. But Kristen was getting pretty bad. We watched a young, vibrant mother-daughter actually go from a beautiful smile to her eyes lit up to now where she had gone through radiation, she had gone through chemotherapy. I'll never forget, she started deteriorating. She was upstairs because at that time she was staying here, and I heard a loud boom above me, and her legs had given out. And she was lying on the floor and just kind of out of it, and her daughter Emma ran. She started to cry, and we all fell on the floor just to make Emma feel better. I said, oh, she just fell down, everything's fine. But what had happened is she started to lose control of her legs and then started to lose her memory, and eventually her arms didn't work, so we had to put her in a wheelchair. And sometime in that process, I said, Kristen, you can't die on me. I said, because if you die, I said, when we close the casket, you're going to get a piece of Daddy's heart. And I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to bury my daughter like that. And of course, you know the outcome. She eventually passed and took a piece of my heart with her. Because when she quit breathing, which was in the room next to me, a piece of me went with her that day. And I was actually heading to Texas on Southwest Airlines. And I was thinking about everything that I had gone through. And I just picked out a notebook just like this one, a legal pad just like this, pulled a little tray down, and I just started writing and reminiscing about the young girl that I saw on the bus stop, pretty blonde hair and the smile, and how that she would say, Daddy, tell me how much you love me. I just started penning the words. And as I started penning the words, it was as if God sincerely was leading me. And as fast as I could think it, or fast as it came into my spirit, I couldn't keep up as the way it was coming. And within, I would say, 5 minutes, I had written this song, and I was just in total shock of the way that the song came about. But really what it was doing was just reminiscing and remembering, you know, how the doctor gave me the news, and how that she had a child, and how that she was on the bus stop, and bang, next thing I know it was there. And then we gave it to the right people, and thus the song, Piece of My Heart. Well, here's what I would say for those who have not lost their children yet. As much as I grieved, I have no guilt. That's a good feeling. And what I mean by that is, when I found out that Kristen was as sick as she was, I tried to spend as much time with her as I could possibly spend. And I had found out that I had learned a lot about her, that my little girl had grown up, and I spent that quality time with her. So I grieve, but there's no guilt. And for those parents that are watching me now, that your child may be diagnosed as having cancer, I would say several things. Get the best doctors you can. That's number one, whatever cost. Secondly, spend as much time with them as you possibly can. I look back now and I'm thankful that I took her to Hawaii. I'm thankful that I went to Maryland with her. I'm thankful I went to the dentist. All those little things that I look back and say, I did everything I could possibly do. So those parents that are watching, do that. And then I think you need a support system. Certainly I had my family around me, and I had my church around me that supported me, that helped me to help her, because there was a lot of times that you'd have to put on your game face to be around her, and then you'd go behind closed doors and lose it. So that's what I would speak to those that have not lost their children. For those that have a child that's gone on or passed, I would say this. Here's what has helped me get through, and I'm still getting through. It's a process, and you never get over it. I think, number one, you need to go to a good counselor. That helped me significantly. I found a good counselor that helped me through the process so that I could go through all the stages of grief. The second thing is that I had to learn that it's okay to get angry, that it's okay to cry, it's okay to ask questions. All those things that I went through, it's okay to be numb. It's okay to feel guilt for a while, but then you have to reminisce and think, I did the best I could. So you go through all the stages of grief. And what I would say is you have to go through those stages because that's healthy. You must go through that. You can't push that aside. You have to have time to grieve. It's very critical. So I would say allow yourself to grieve and go through the process and take whatever time you need to do that. The third thing is you have to get a support system. The fortunate thing that I have is I still have my children and my grandchildren and friends that support me. They go through it. There's good days and bad days, and it's been over a year. It's just a little over a year now. And there's still days that I will see something, hear something, or even listen to a piece of my heart that I lose it. But I've learned that you heal up a little bit faster. Life goes on, and I'm going to make a difference for Kristen. I can't give up. I'm going to make a difference. And for those that have lost loved ones, make a difference. Take what the enemy, that enemy of cancer, take what the enemy has meant for bad and turn it around for good. And thus, that's why the foundation. Mm-hmm. Because we're going to take every penny of this finances and we're going to do two things. We're going to feed the poor and needy, because Kristen loved that. And we're also going to fight cancer, because surely there's going to be a cure someday. And maybe that last dollar somebody gives may be the solution. Who knows? So that's the way that I'm coping with the grief. Everybody copes differently. Some people go away, some people hide, some people fight. But to you that are watching right now, allow the process to happen. You can't not go through the process. I made a lot of mistakes in that year. I look back and think, well, I could have done this differently, or I wish I wouldn't have done that after Kristen passed. I remember one time taking a book and starting early in the morning and till late that night, I sat at the crypt and read the entire book and just wept and cried. And, got mad at God. But it's okay. God understands.